before I begin with the video, I just want to plug my channel, my YouTube channel, that I would highly recommend you subscribe to the Amazing Kitty Asotas, my YouTube channel. If you like gaming videos on retro video games, and and topics on like exploring metaphysics, um me just talking about things like just my thoughts on things just dumb things that I find on the internet. I mostly do retro games. I mostly do video games and stuff of that nature on this channel, with the occasional video like why do children not want to be around their parents on Christmas? Well, that's a good video. Or I might do a video on metaphysics, like like the the metaphysicians' views on race and gender and sexuality, which I will probably be linking to those videos in 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 my channel description. These are like really good videos that I would highly recommend people check out. You can also check out my website where I post stuff on like various guides and various resources. I got a good web resources thing, and you can check out things that I've been working on lately. And then just on various subjects that I've talked about. And some like other resources. You can also follow me on like BitChute, because I also post a bunch of like different videos on here. Usually just using this to archive stuff. Some of the time I post videos on here. And you can follow me on Twitter, which you might find some of my remarks about my certain things here to be interesting. And you can also follow me on Minds. And I've thought about actually posting more stuff on Minds. I really need to get back on that. It's been like quite a few years since I've done that. So maybe I'll just start doing that. Hello YouTube, it is I, the Amazing Kitty Asotas, with another video. Open up with a reading from Ezekiel 1. And I thought it would be quite appropriate to read Ezekiel 1, since it'll be pertinent to what I am going to be discussing. As I looked, a stormy wind came out of the north, a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually. And in the middle of the fire, something like a gleaming amber. In the middle of it was something like 4 living creatures. This was their appearance. They were human they were human form. Each had 4 faces, and each of them had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and the soles of their feet were like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like burnished bronze. Under their wings, on their four sides, they had human hands, and the four had their faces and their wings. Thus, their wings touched one another. Each of them moved straight ahead without turning as they moved. As for the appearance of their faces, the four had the face of a human being, the face of a lion on the right side, the face of an ox on the left, and the face of an eagle. Such were their faces. Their wings were spread out above each other, had two wings, each of which touched the wing of another, while two covered their bodies. Each moved straight ahead, whereas the spirit would go, they went, without turning as they went in the middle of. The living creatures, there was something that looked like burning coals of fire, like touching, like touches moving to and fro among the living creatures. The fire was bright, and the lightning issued from the fire. The living creatures darted to and fro like a flashing lightning. And, and of course, this will be relevant. This will be relevant to what we're going to be discussing, and you can read the rest of this. So I'll just leave it up here because we're going to be discussing this as it is very pertinent to what we're going to be discussing here. What then is the most important part of a chariot? I'm going to give you a minute. I'll give you a little while to figure that out. Know thou the soul as rider, as riding a chariot. The body as the chariot. Know thou the intellect as the chariot driver, and the mind as the reins. The senses, they say, are the horses, the objects of sense. What they range over, the self combined with senses and mind, wise men call the enjoyer. Know the self as lord of the chariot, the body as the chariot itself, the discriminating intellect as the charioteer, and the mind as the reins. The senses, say the wise, are the horses. Selfish desires are the roads they travel. When the self is confused with the body, mind, and the senses, they point out he seems to enjoy pleasure and suffer sorrow. So remember, when they're talking about the self, they're not talking about the psychophysical, i.e. the mind. they are talking about Atman. Atman. And Atman simply is more or less the soul. Not to be confused with the mind, with manas, as they would call it. I'm going to ask you once again, what is the most important part of a chariot? So, the chariot, of course, is body, the passenger, soul, the reins, mind, the 5 horses representing our 5 senses, the charioteer is intellect. Intellect drives our actions. And so the intellect tells us what we need to do, but do we always do what our intellect tells us? No. So in the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna imparts to Arjuna various important spiritual lessons. Yeah, I would actually recommend people read the Bhagavad Gita. It's a very interesting read if you ever want to read something. Let's get started with the symbolism. The chariot represents the physical body, the 5 horses each representing one of our senses: sight, hearing, taste, touch, smell. The reins symbolizing the mind. Our mind is connected to the senses and can drive our senses. The charioteer represents the intellect. The passenger represents the soul. And in this case, Krishna represents the super soul or the inner witness. So then, yet again, what is the most important part of a chariot? So the following is from the translation of the Katha Upanishad. And you actually heard me read this. So let's see. So let's read it again. Know the self as the Lord of the chariot, and the body as the chariot itself. Know the intellect as the charioteer, and the mind as the reins. The senses, they say, are the horses, and the objects of sensation are the paths over which they run. When the sense of self is associated with the body, the senses and the mind, this wise men call the enjoyer. So what then is the most important part of the chariot? Therefore, everyone who listens to these messages of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on a rock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against the house. But it did not collapse, because its foundation was the rock, was a rock, or the rock. Everyone who keeps on hearing these messages of mine and never puts them into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on sand. The rain fell, the floods came, the winds blew and battered that house, and it collapsed, and its collapse was total. And so, take note of this tree here. And you have like the names of the names of God and whatnot. I mean, this is an example of an inverted tree that you might find. So we've got some quotations. The Katha Upanishad, the tree of eternity, has its roots above and its branches on earth below. Its pure root is Brahman, the immortal, from whom all the worlds draw their life, and whom none can transcend, for this self is supreme. There's that capital S, self, again. It is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches downward, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. It's very funny that that it is funny how the Jews say that the tree in the Garden of Eden grew figs, like that of the Bodhi or banyan tree. I believe the banyan tree and the Bodhi tree are the same tree. There is this tree whose low-hanging fruit is the empirical knowledge of good and evil, where the fruit is blocked off from the light, and the other is the high-hanging fruit of wisdom of life that is touched by the light of the Absolute. The physical world is more centralized than the metaphysical. Man became deceived by the world because he became curious of it as a result of eating the fruit of episteme rather than the fruit of gnosis. Maya with her potency took hold of man. The fruit of episteme is the fruit of good and evil, and the fruit of gnosis is the fruit of life. Malevolence, arrogance, pride, selfishness, narcissism, hubris, lust, covetous, self-righteousness, self-centeredness, egotism, ugliness, perpetual rage, hatred, or perpetual hatred, degeneracy, deception, delusion, pompousness, vengeance, and self-entitlement are two low-hanging fruit that hangs even lower. The fruit of empirical knowledge is the less sickly of the low-hanging fruit, but it's still potentially sickly. It is one of those fruit that that isn't bad fruit per se, but it can become bad. It can become rotten because it's the easy road taken. It is the one that can become worm infested. And the fruits for which are the even lower hanging fruit are the fruit that fall off the tree. Other high hanging fruit are benevolence, righteousness, humility, selflessness, compassion, mercy, empathy, and love. Empirical knowledge can only go so far, for that disappears at the time of death. But wisdom transcends the shackles of the physical, i.e. body, and the psychophysical, i.e. mind. To be like children is to have the experience of the psychophysical dying, where you realize that you are not what you thought you were. where you realize that the only permanent thing is the axle, as if you were being born again. As a child, you were closer to the absolute, but as you grew up, you became distant. And so let's take a look at this, for instance. We see an eye within a triangle. You see Jesus with thorns on his head. And we see that there are thorns here. And here's more thorns. Very interesting. A center pillar, I would assume. And if we actually look, this is basically the same thing being shown, or rather a similar thing being shown rather than the same. So we have that same thing going on here, the crown. And we've got all of these different attributes being shown. We've got two pillars, one here, the other there. The center pillar, similar concept. Similar concept to what we're seeing here. You've got a pillar that goes from here down to there. And this is the physical world where we inhabit. And this is also a world where man inhabits. Adam Kadmon is what we're looking at here. And so we've got attributes here being talked about here. Let's take a look at this. The symbolism of the inverted tree in Hinduism. Upside down inverted tree of life. It's very interesting how I've shown you the different trees of life. And so let's take a look. In the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, the cosmic tree is represented as a huge inverted tree, also known as an inverted tree of life, or upside down tree. It is a symbol that the entire universe originates from a single source. The roots of the tree are in the sky. The wisdom and creative energy is dispensed to earth through the branches. And so, very interesting symbolism. It's that same symbolism that I showed you before. It's that same symbolism right here, where we have at the top, and so as we go down, yeah, very same symbolism. And so this inverted tree is always represented by the people tree. It is an image of the living cosmos. It is considered to be the center of the world. The cosmic tree connects the sky, the earth, and the netherworld. Inverted cosmic tree also represents the path of spiritual ascension. It is also a symbol of the ultimate spiritual experience. Ignorance, i.e. avidya, which another word for ignorance is delusion, is where is when we forget the true source, roots, and cling to the leaves and branches, whose existence is dependent on the roots. The tree of life has its unseen roots in the absolute, or Brahman. The tree and the branches represent Brahman and its manifested forms. The tree grows upside down. It has its roots above in the spiritual realm, or the lower and higher metaphysical realms, and the branches below in the material and psychological realm. Or rather in the material realm only. The inverted tree in Hindu scriptures in the Katha Upanishad, which is what I showed you, showed you that quotation. An inverted tree appears as a symbol of the world itself. The universe is a tree eternally existing, its root aloft, its branches spread below. In this analogy, the physical world is rooted in Brahman. The pure root, the tree, is Brahman, the immortal, in which the three worlds have their being. And the Bhagavad Gita calls the cosmic tree, the cosmic upside down tree, the Ashvattha tree. The tree has roots above and the branches below. The leaves of the tree is likened to verses of poetry. Krishna identifies himself with the Ashvattha tree and states that he is the foundation of human life, permeating the soil. I support beings by my vital energy. Now we have Swami Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada talks about the upside down tree symbolism. The root of this material existence is upside down. This means that it begins from the total material substance, from the topmost planet of the universe. From there, the whole universe is expanded, with so many branches representing the various planetary systems. The fruits are the results of the living entities' activities. They include religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. And so this is Swami Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, page 228, published by Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, New York. Very interesting. Another symbolism, the tree of life has its unseen roots in Brahman. The tree, of course, the tree and the branches represent Brahman in its manifested forms. The tree grows upside down. It has its roots above in the spiritual realm, and its branches below in the material realm. Ram K. Pipariya. So, in here, and so, very interesting. Very interesting, this tree symbolism. What's this tree symbolism about? You know, Any dudes out there got a hair transplant, used Viagra, taken pre-workout or protein shakes to improve effects of exercise, gotten a haircut? Congratulations on your gender affirming care. Did it make you feel more like yourself? How you want to feel and appear? This is by Dr. Julia. And in response to that, from like Philosophy Cat, my message to gender confused people would be this: you are not your body. Your body is how these atoms are temporarily arranged in this lifetime. Seeking happiness through identification with the body will never bring you fulfillment. And of course, we have in this discussion, this is the thinking behind transgenderism, that there is a true self divorced from the material, which can then be freely altered to suit one's preference. And Philosophy Cat responds to this, Dwight: if they are trying to force their body to match what they feel they are, then they are overly identified with the material. One who understands their higher self rises above such banal levels of duality. The fertile peasant said, "Lo, none of those things are gender affirming. The style of a haircut, possibly. I've never felt the need to affirm my gender. There are certain things you need to do to take care of yourself as one sex or the other, but that's hardly affirming." And in the early versions of what I'm going to be talking about, there is a world outside of the world of distinction, outside the world of black man, white man, man and woman. This reality, or rather unreality, as many of you would call it, is the world of indistinction, i.e. the absolute, i.e. Brahman. What is the difference between steam, ice, and water? There is none. That thou art, and not this nor that which lies in the world of distinction, i.e. the world of bumping particles. The world of distinctions is nothing more than shadows of objects upon the wall. The absolute is in distinction because it is without separation. When we look at the heavens, we see ourselves reflected as if Shiva was shown a mirror. Shiva was shown a mirror to his face by Parvati. Here is man's problem. What we should not be doing is seeing the world through the lens of race and gender and sexuality. To see the world through such lenses is the very reason why we are divided. We can even extend this to religion and politics as well. Racism and sexism, like many other forms of bigotry, are what brings about polarization. And you can't stoop down to the level of the wicked in order to bring about change, as Martin Luther King Jr. would have probably said. Polarization is only going to create more polarization. Like hitting a black person hitting another black person, a black person hitting another white person. I mean, for saying the N-word. So love and be loved, hate and be hated, kill and be killed. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth is something that really people really need to think about. That one. The open dialogue has always been the best method for ending polarization Or as the wise sage once said, the lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding. And this person brought up a good point. Mystics who are willing to throw away entire segments of their traditions because people online deem them problematic are metaphysical traders. If you place the opinions of man over the facts of the divine, you have no devotion in your heart. It's a lot like these Christians that want to that want to sell out to the woke crowd and change large parts of the Bible to fit whatever narrative benefits them in the current day. Like, that has been the problem with Christianity throughout the centuries. Is that they bow down to whatever is popular, not popular, to whatever is mainstream rather than popular, but whatever is mainstream, and try to fit the religion into that instead of upholding the traditions which their religion was built upon. Like, is this guy here says all traditions are just the opinions of man. Well, is that true? Does the center hold on that? Like the center holds here. I would change the opinion of the divine to the facts, to the FACTS, facts of the divine. You know, traditions begin with a person connects to a current that is metaphysically beyond them. Then it channels through them, but the traditions themselves come from something far beyond us. True or untrue? Does the center hold on that? The masculine and feminine principles are a perfect example of this. I particularly like the animalistic Shiza dog depiction of this in some Buddhist cultures. Yeah, I really am not familiar with that. But here's something that is probably the most accurate description of such people that would sacrifice, trade, that would get rid of the traditions just to fit whatever fad is mainstream. They're just political atheist agnostics that want to LARP as spiritual. That's probably the most accurate description of such people. It is a form of religious devotion in a way, just not a devotion to the tradition in question. Woke leftoids tend to be very devoted to their cause and unbearably and insufferably pious to boot. You know the Christians that want to sacrifice their that want to give in to like the woke fad are the same people, or Julius Iscariot, who are akin to Julius Iscariot, who traded Jesus over for 30 pieces. Either it's 30 pieces of silver or 50. I don't know. but traded him over for like pieces of silver. I mean, they would be the very people that would be the main culprit behind the crucifixion of Jesus. The opinion of the divine, or rather the facts of the divine, is as dynamic as those who deem to know them. It's cyclical, always has been. The notion of static mysticism is immensely flawed. The Druids who existed before written history practiced differently than today, yet the intention is the same. I mean, I don't know how much of the center holds on that, but some of these are very interesting ones. That willful blind spot among occultists goes back long before social media. If the cosmology doesn't include the national egregore, there is a vital part missing. Gods run in the blood. I don't know how true that is either. But you can see, like that one, that the center holds on that one. And that one with a little bit of change, the center holds, like, rather than say the opinions of the divine, it is the facts of the divine. Because when you're dealing with things with the divine, it is fact rather than opinion. What does a rock solid foundation, a staff, and an axle wheel have to do with each other? So let's get into this. So from non-becoming to becoming, from not a thing to a thing, from unmanifest to manifest, from non-existence to existence, from indistinction to from indistinction to distinction. All came from Brahman, and thus all must return to Brahman. As above, so below, as above, so below, as above, as within, so without as within. Within us all is the one with a capital O. And the all is without us, all with a capital A. The all is nothing more than the negative image of the one. The absolute is non-duality. The creative process is the interplay of inverses, outverses, and opposites. Fear not for what is not real, never was, and never will be. What is real always was, and thus cannot be destroyed. It is the immortal soul, or Atman, which is, or the self, which is, with the capital S, which is at the heart of all things. It is this Atman that you are, which is formless beyond the mind. You see the world through the rose-tinted glasses of sex, race, gender, and sexuality. You see the world. There are evil. You see the world. You see the world through the rose-tinted glasses of sex, race, gender, and sexuality. There are evil with all caps, people who want us to remain ignorant, i.e., continually in error, thus we will become delusional, thus disconnected with the divine. Knowledge itself does not necessarily lead to liberation, but acting on it does. In this case, the knowledge would be gnosis. It is not just ignorance which is sin, but also the failure to act upon what is known to be true. To connect or religar which religar is a Latin word, which is the root word for the word religion. To connect or religar is to realize that there is beyond the body and most certainly beyond the mind. It is to realize that there is more than us. That person who gives up all material desires and lives free from a sense of greed, proprietorship, and egoism attains perfect peace. That which is real is that which is at the center of a hyperboloid, or torus. It is that which is at the center of a wheel, that which is the axle of a wheel, the wheel being the wheel of fortune, which you can see the wheel of fortune right here from the tarot, or the wheel of fate, or the wheel of samsara, i.e. the wheel of becoming. You could even call it the wheel of time. There's a famous book series called The Wheel of Time. Or the wheel of dharma. It is with this wheel of fate where you are rewarded for past actions, good or bad. That duality can be felt. All things fall apart when there is no center to hold. The scepter of righteousness, which is the same thing as this axle. This axle of eternity is what orients us. Put your faith, i.e. the act of hanging your body, on things that stand the test of impermanence. The center has to hold. The center is the rest point of inertia, the resting point of inertia. The closer you get to the center of the sphere, the closer you get to non-duality. On either side of a hyperboloid is a vortex, from which the past and the future converge. One vortex looks like it is going clockwise and the other counterclockwise, but both are in reality moving clockwise. The spokes of the wheel are illumination from the Absolute, i.e. Brahman, which is the axle of eternity. Brahma has four heads like the cardinal points. These are the directions that illumination defines the world. Light creates the world. Light is the one. How many of you know that the Great Pyramid of Giza has 8 sides? It's very important to know. Because it's kind of like a sundial. And it functions like a sundial. And it's a very perfect illustration of the progression of time. The spokes of the wheel create distinction, thus creating time. Reason is the very fabric of language which creates our world and our understanding of it. The logos, i.e. the word, long before it was used by the Christians, it existed long before the Christians came along and used it, creates the means for our understanding. So the logos, i.e. the word, creates the means for understanding the divine. Some say that the truth is the number 1, and others say that the truth is the number 2. But the truth is the number 3, for 2 plus 1 equals 3. Any monistic metaphysician will tell you there are 2 pillars. Remember that diagram of the Adam Cadmon, and you see the 3 pillars? There are 2 pillars and there is 1 pillar in the middle. 2 pillars represent duality, male and female, and the middle pillar represents non-duality, from the absolute to the physical world. This middle pillar plays a vital role. This is also the tree. This is also the tree of eternity. And some in the Indian tradition, and it's that same tree that you saw with the Assyrians, and with that I believe that's a Kabbalistic diagram as well that you saw. I mean, 2 of those were Kabbalistic diagrams. The other was Hindu. So this middle pillar represents non-duality, from the absolute to the physical world. This middle pillar plays a vital role. The true self, i.e. Brahman, is like a raindrop that returns to the water that is Brahman. Be like the fish which swims upstream back to the source. When we do this, we are on the path to the absolute. Fight the current of impermanence, just as one would fight to survive. Will the staff of righteousness, which helps us to be upright, which sets us straight, hold against the current of impermanence. People see the world through the lenses of good and evil, and don't realize that this binary viewing of the world is myopic. You as a child once thought in binary thinking, but as an adult you realize that what is considered good and what is considered evil can be a matter of opinion. For what is good for the lion is not good for the gazelle. What nature considers to be good and evil is not the same as what man considers good and evil. Man usurps the authority of God and calls what is evil as good, and what is good as evil. Beware of people who are so tolerant that they become tolerant of fools, and intolerant of wise men, for they are the kind that says that evil is good and good is evil. Distinction, i.e. duality, is needed for understanding. The absolute cannot be quantified. Love does not claim possession, for to possess love is to quantify it. United as one through love and devotion, it gives freedom. Science gives man power over nature, but the divine gives man power over himself. From pain to pleasure, we see the fleeting nature of things. From chasing after illusory things to realizing that you have been chasing after things which are trivial. The very definition of existence is impermanence. To merely exist is to be unaware of time and the impermanence of things, not to realize that all things bound to the existential are bound by cycles. Detachment means change. To be attached is to be in a state of non-flux. Bruce Lee said to flow like water, to allow the mind to go through change. What of us when we dream? We are living in the dream of the dreamer, from which countless worlds are created from his dreaming. The plane of inertia is the wheel of time. The spokes of the wheel are equally arranged by 6, 7, 8, or 12. The universe, or That is to say, the observable universe can be envisioned as a giant wheel within a sphere or torus, from which we only see a fraction of the universe. The planets exist on the plane of inertia. The sun is like the nucleus of an atom. From our point of view, the sun is indistinguishable from the axle. The sun is that which the axle fits into. The sun is the point of illumination from which all things arise. The axle is the light. Light is principle, and illumination is attribute. Light is invisible to the human eye. The one is beyond the material. In all things there is a part of all things. Simultaneous presence of all beings together is a unified objective field for consciousness to experience. The absolute, i.e., the one, is seated in the heart of all living entities. The absolute, i.e., the one, i.e., Brahman, is the beginning, middle, and end of all things. In short, the absolute is the Alpha and the Omega, the one who was, the one who is, and the one who is to come. The sun is the Alpha, i.e., the closest point to the center. The Omega is the furthest point away from the axle. For you Christians, you would view the Father as the past, much like Brahma is viewed the same. The Son as the future, much like Shiva is. And the Holy Spirit is the present, much like Vishnu is. Brahma being omniscient, Shiva being omnipotent, and Vishnu being omnipresent. Brahma can see all the past, can see the past, present, and future, so he has foresight. Shiva ultimately creates as well as destroys the world, and Vishnu knows the heart of man. Vishnu maintains creation. Vishnu comes to set the world right. So understanding these principles, one might begin to envision the divine a little differently from the way you probably have been taught to envision. And also think about how an argument must stand the test of impermanence, must be able to stand the test of change in order for it to be a strong argument.